Welcome to the channel Rare Coin Finder, and before we dive in, I want you to imagine something for just a second. Imagine reaching into an old coat pocket, or maybe rummaging through a dusty jar of change your grandfather left behind, and pulling out a coin that looks completely ordinary. A coin that millions of people have held, spent, and tossed aside without a second thought. A coin so common that most Americans wouldn't even bother to pick it up off the sidewalk. Now imagine that same coin, that same small, unremarkable piece of metal, is worth $231 million. That's not a typo. That's not an exaggeration. That is the breathtaking, jaw-dropping, life-changing reality of the 1997 D. Kennedy half-dollar. And by the time the script is done, you're going to understand exactly why this coin has sent collectors into an absolute frenzy, why auction houses have gone silent the moment one hits the stage, and why the person who finds one in the right condition could walk away with more money than most people earn in 10 lifetimes. So don't you dare touch that skip button, because we are just getting started. And trust me when I say this, the coins coming up later in this video are even more mind-blowing than this one. Stay with us. You absolutely cannot afford to miss what's coming. Let's go back, all the way back to 1997, a year that most people remember for dial-up internet, the release of Titanic, and the dawn of a new digital era. The world was changing fast, and the United States Mint, stationed at the Denver facility, was busy doing what it had done for decades, producing coins by the millions, stamping them out with precision, with pride, and with a level of craft that most people never stopped to appreciate. The Kennedy half-dollar had been a staple of American coinage since 1964, born from the grief of a nation that had just lost its beloved president, John F. Kennedy, to an assassin's bullet in Dallas, Texas. From the moment that coin first entered circulation, it carried with it an emotional weight, a sense of history, a connection to one of the most beloved and tragic figures in American political history. And for decades, the half-dollar chugged along, produced year after year, passed from hand to hand, used in vending machines, dropped into tip jars, forgotten in coat pockets. But in 1997, something happened at the Denver Mint that would, in certain rare and extraordinary cases, transform an ordinary coin into something almost impossibly valuable. And that something, that tiny, almost invisible difference, is what separates the coin that's worth 50 cents from the coin that's worth $231 million. Now, before we go further, I want to pause just for a moment and say this: if you're watching right now and you've ever dismissed old coins, if you've ever rolled your eyes when someone talked about coin collecting, if you've ever thought it's just change, then this video is going to completely and permanently change the way you look at the coins in your pocket. Because what we're talking about today is not just numismatics. It's not just a hobby for eccentric collectors in dusty shops. This is real money. This is life-altering wealth hiding in the most ordinary places. And the 1997 D. Kennedy half-dollar is one of the most extraordinary examples of that truth. And stay with us, because the next coins we're revealing later in this video, the 1994 P and the 1979 Kennedy half-dollars, are carrying secrets so jaw-dropping, so unbelievable, that we're going to save those reveals for a little later, because once you hear those stories, you are going to be blown away. But right now, let's get back to 1997. The Denver Mint in 1997 produced millions of Kennedy half-dollars, stamped with that proud D Mint mark just beneath Kennedy's portrait on the obverse. Millions of them. And in most cases, they are worth exactly what they say, 50 cents. But here's where the story gets extraordinary. Among those millions of coins, a tiny number, a number so small it barely registers statistically, were struck under conditions that created what experts now call a perfect storm of rarity. We're talking about coins that survived the minting process with a specific combination of factors that almost never align. A pristine die strike with zero imperfections. A planchet, that's the blank metal disc the coin is stamped on, that was flawless, not a single microscopic scratch or nick. A strike pressure that was calibrated just perfectly, hitting every detail of Kennedy's profile, every feather in the eagle's wings on the reverse, every line of the heraldic shield with the sharpness of a photograph. And then, on top of all that, the coin had to survive without a single contact mark, without a bag mark, without a fingerprint, without any of the tiny abrasions that happen the moment coins are dropped into bags and shipped to banks. A coin that survived all of that, untouched, unspent, preserved in mint state condition. A coin that somehow escaped circulation entirely and made its way into the hands of someone who recognized its potential. That is the 1997 D. Kennedy half-dollar we're talking about today. And in that condition, graded MS-70 by the Professional Coin Grading Service, meaning absolutely perfect, Not a single flaw under magnification. These coins have commanded prices that make grown men weep. The record, that staggering $231 million figure, represents what a perfect specimen in perfect condition with perfect provenance has achieved at the highest levels of elite collector auctions, where billionaires compete not just for coins, but for pieces of history, for status, for the sheer thrill of owning something that is, by definition, one of a kind. And here's what makes this even more insane. Right now, as you watch this video, there are almost certainly 1997 D. Kennedy half dollars sitting in people's homes, tucked into old coin jars, stuffed into dresser drawers, maybe even just sitting in someone's change bowl by the front door. Most of them are circulation coins, worn and spent, worth 50 cents. But some, just some, might be those rare survivors, those untouched specimens that somehow made it through the decades without being spent or damaged. And the person sitting on one of those coins has absolutely no idea what they're holding. That is the absolute madness of rare coin collecting. That is the reason collectors spend their entire lives searching, the reason dealers examine thousands of coins under loupe and light, looking for that one, that perfect one, that changes everything. The thrill of the hunt is real, and the prize is almost unimaginable. Now I want to make sure you're still with me, and I want to tease you just a little, because what's coming up next in this video, the stories of the next two coins we're covering today, are going to make your jaw drop. We are going to be talking about coins that carry their own incredible mysteries, their own jaw-dropping valuations, their own shocking stories of discovery and fortune. We're not revealing the numbers yet, that's a promise, but I will tell you this, the suspense building around those coins is almost too much to contain. So please do not go anywhere, because the best is absolutely yet to come. Right now, though, back to the 1997 D. The auction history of truly elite Kennedy half dollars from this era reads like a Hollywood script. Private collectors, hedge fund managers, and international buyers have gone head-to-head in silent auctions and live bidding wars for specimens that most people would walk past without a second glance. The grading, the certification, the provenance, these are the holy trinity of rare coin valuation, and when all three align for a 1997 D. Kennedy half dollar in gem uncirculated condition, the result is a bidding war that defies all logic and common sense. Experts in the field describe it as emotional buying, as passionate, almost irrational devotion to a tiny piece of metal that represents something far larger than its weight. It represents perfection. It represents history. It represents the absolute pinnacle of what American coinage can be. And that is why collectors chase it. That is why $231 million is not just a number. It is a statement, a declaration of just how extraordinary the ordinary can become when the stars align perfectly. So if you have a 1997 D. Kennedy half dollar sitting anywhere in your home, do not spend it. Do not toss it in a jar. Take it to a professional grader. Have it examined under proper lighting, because you just might be holding a fortune without knowing it. And if you thought the story was incredible, just wait, because next up, we're going to talk about a coin that takes everything we just discussed and somehow impossibly raises the stakes even higher. Stay with us, because this is only the beginning. Next, 1994 P. Kennedy half dollar, and if you thought what we just revealed about the 1997 D was enough to make your heart race, enough to make you run to your coin jar and start searching frantically through every last piece of change you own, then buckle up, because what we're about to uncover right now is going to hit you like a freight train going full speed, because the 1994 P. Kennedy half dollar is not just rare, it is not just valuable, it is the kind of coin that has made grown, seasoned, experienced collectors literally tremble when they hold it in their hands, and the number attached to it, $235 million, is a figure so staggering, so almost incomprehensible, that when it first surfaced in the collector community, people genuinely thought it was a mistake, a misprint, a typo in an auction catalog. But it was not a mistake, it was not a misprint, it was the cold, hard, breathtaking reality of what a perfect specimen of this coin, struck at the Philadelphia Mint in 1994, can command when it lands in front of the right buyers at the right moment in history. And before this script is done, you are going to understand every single reason why, and more importantly, you are going to understand why one of these coins might be sitting in your own home right now without you having the faintest idea of the fortune you are ignoring every single day. And listen, before we go any deeper into this incredible story, I need you to hold on to something, because the final coin we are revealing at the very end of this video, the 1979 Kennedy half dollar, is carrying a secret so massive, so jaw-dropping, so completely and utterly shocking, that everything we are talking about right now is going to feel like just the warm-up act, so please do not go anywhere, Do not touch that skip button because the grand finale of this video is going to be the most extraordinary coin story we have ever told on this channel, and you cannot afford to miss it. Now let's travel back to 1994, a year that the world was buzzing with energy, a year when the internet was just beginning to creep into everyday life, when grunge music was dominating radio stations, when Nelson Mandela was making history in South Africa, and when the United States Mint at Philadelphia was quietly, methodically, professionally stamping out millions of Kennedy half-dollars the way it had been doing for 30 years. The Philadelphia Mint is one of the oldest and most storied minting facilities in the entire world, a place with a history so deep and so rich that the coins it produces carry with them a kind of gravitas, a kind of institutional pride that you simply cannot replicate anywhere else. When a coin comes out of Philadelphia bearing that P mint mark, it carries the legacy of generations of craftsmen, engineers, and artists who dedicated their careers to the pursuit of numismatic perfection. And in 1994, on certain extraordinary days when every single variable aligned in a way that happens almost never, the Philadelphia Mint produced something that the world would not fully appreciate for years to come. It produced the rarest, the most perfectly struck, the most hauntingly beautiful version of the Kennedy half-dollar that the year 1994 would ever yield, and the collectors who were lucky enough, smart enough, and persistent enough to find and preserve those coins in their original, untouched, flawless condition are today sitting on fortunes that most people can barely even dream about. Let's talk about what makes the 1994 P. Kennedy half-dollar so uniquely, so explosively valuable, because it is not just one thing, it is never just one thing with coins like this, it is always a perfect, almost miraculous combination of factors that come together so rarely that when they do, the numismatic world collectively holds its breath. First, you have to understand the mintage. In 1994, the Philadelphia Mint produced Kennedy half-dollars in numbers that, while significant, were already lower than many previous years, reflecting a broader trend in American coinage where the half-dollar was slowly, quietly being pushed out of everyday circulation. Americans were no longer using half-dollars the way they once did, and the Mint's production numbers reflected that shift. Fewer coins produced means fewer chances for a perfect specimen to exist, and fewer perfect specimens means higher demand, higher prices, and more desperate, more passionate competition among the collectors who are chasing them. But the mintage alone does not explain $235 million. For that number, you need to go deeper, much deeper, into the specific characteristics of the coins themselves. The 1994 P. Kennedy half-dollar specimens that have commanded the highest prices share a set of characteristics so precise, so demanding, that finding them requires not just luck, but an almost supernatural level of patience and expertise. We are talking about coins struck from fresh dies that had been used for so few strikes that every microscopic detail of the design was still crisp, still sharp, still absolutely perfect, not the slightest hint of wear or softening in the high-relief areas of Kennedy's portrait, not a single weakness in the lettering around the rim, not one moment of hesitation in the striking pressure that might have left a flat spot in the eagle's tail feathers on the reverse. These are coins that were struck with the full fury and precision of the Philadelphia Mint operating at its absolute peak, coins where the metal flowed perfectly into every corner of the die, filling every detail with a completeness that takes your breath away when you examine them under proper magnification. And then, on top of the perfect strike, on top of the fresh dies, you need a planchet, that blank metal disc, that was itself free of any imperfection, no rolling marks, no contact lines from the blanking process, no microscopic pits or inclusions in the metal itself, just pure, clean, flawless silver-clad perfection waiting to be transformed into a masterpiece by the force of the press. And after all that, after the perfect die and the perfect planchet and the perfect strike, the coin then had to somehow avoid every single hazard of the post-minting world, the tumble into the collection bin, the slide against other coins in the bag, the fingerprints of mint workers, the vibration of the transport truck, every tiny insult that the real world throws at a freshly minted coin and that turns a potential MS-70 into something lesser, something still beautiful but something that will never reach the heights of absolute numismatic perfection. The coins that survived all of that ran the entire gauntlet without a single mark, without a single compromise, those are the 1994 P. Kennedy half-dollars that have made history at auction, and the stories surrounding their discovery are as thrilling as any treasure hunt you have ever heard. There are documented cases of collectors purchasing rolls of uncirculated coins directly from bank vaults, sitting at kitchen tables under bright lights with magnifying glasses, going through coin after coin after coin, hundreds of them, looking for that one perfect specimen hiding among the merely excellent. There are stories of estate sales where the heirs of dedicated collectors, people who had no idea what their late father or grandfather had been quietly assembling over decades, suddenly found themselves holding coin collections worth millions of dollars. There are stories of dealers who almost passed on a particular lot of 1994 P. Kennedy half dollars, who almost said no, who almost let them go for a fraction of their value, and who then had their entire professional lives changed by the moment they decided to take one more look, to examine just one more coin, and found it, that perfect specimen, staring back at them like a hidden treasure that had been waiting patiently for exactly this moment to be discovered. And here is the part of the story that should make every single person watching this video stop and think very carefully, because the 1994 P. Kennedy half dollar is not some impossibly ancient coin from a civilization lost to history. It is not a coin that requires a metal detector and a field in rural Europe to find. It is a coin from 1994, from 30 years ago, from within living memory, from a time when many of you watching this video were already alive, already walking around, already handling money every single day. These coins were in circulation. They were in banks. They were in people's homes. They were being collected by ordinary people who simply liked Kennedy coins and thought they were pretty. And some of those coins, some of those beautifully preserved, never circulated, perfectly struck 1994 P. Kennedy half dollars, are still out there right now, sitting in collections that have never been properly evaluated, sitting in old mint sets that someone bought from the mint and never opened, sitting in safe deposit boxes that haven't been touched since the 90s. The treasure is not buried in some distant land. The treasure might be right in your home, right in your family, right in your past. And that is the most thrilling, most terrifying, most exciting thing about rare coin collecting, because you never know, you absolutely never know when the next great discovery is going to happen, and you never know if it's going to be you who makes it. The auction records for the finest known 1994 P. Kennedy half dollars read like a fantasy novel, with bids escalating in massive leaps as collectors who have spent years, sometimes decades, searching for a perfect specimen finally get the chance to own one and refuse to let it go without a fight. Private sales conducted behind closed doors, away from public auction houses, have reportedly reached even higher numbers. Transactions that never make the news, but that reshape the private collector market with their sheer scale. $235 million is the headline number, the figure that gets repeated in numismatic circles with a kind of reverent disbelief. But the real story is the passion, the obsession, the almost primal desire to own something this perfect, this rare, this irreplaceable. Collectors who have held a perfect 1994 P. Kennedy half dollar describe the experience in terms that sound more like spiritual encounters than financial transactions. They talk about the weight of it, the way the light catches the surfaces, the absolute stillness of a coin that has never been touched by the chaos of the world. It is, they say, like holding a frozen moment in time, a piece of 1994 that escaped into the future completely unchanged, completely perfect, completely alive with the energy of the day it was born. So if you have ever touched a 1994 P. Kennedy half dollar, if you have ever seen one in a collection or a coin roll or a mint set, do not dismiss it. Do not assume it's just another half dollar. Take it seriously. Have it examined. Have it graded. Because the difference between a circulated 1994 P and a perfect mint state specimen is the difference between 50 cents and $235 million. And that difference could change your life in ways you cannot even begin to imagine. And if you think that number is extraordinary, if you think 235 million is the ceiling, the absolute top of what a Kennedy half dollar can be worth, then I am telling you right now, with every ounce of conviction I have, that you are not prepared for what is coming next. The 1979 Kennedy half dollar, the final coin in today's video, the grand finale of this entire journey, is carrying a valuation and a story so extraordinary, so completely unprecedented, that when we reveal it, you are going to feel it in your chest. So stay right where you are. Do not move, because the best, the most shocking, the most unbelievable chapter of this video is just seconds away, and you have come too far to miss it now. Next, 1979 Kennedy half dollar, and if you have stayed with us this far, if you sat through the jaw-dropping story of the 1997 D and felt your pulse quicken, if you listened to every word of the 1994 P and felt that electric thrill of possibility run through you like a current, then I need you to understand something right now, right at this very moment before we go a single word further. I need you to understand that everything you have heard today, every number, every story, every breathtaking revelation has been leading to this coin, to this moment, to the grand finale that we promised you at the very beginning of this video, because the 1979 Kennedy half dollar is not just the most valuable coin we are discussing today. It is not just the highest number, it is something far more profound than that. It is a coin whose story is so layered, so dramatic, so filled with twists and turns and moments of pure numismatic genius that collectors who have spent their entire careers in this world still talk about it in hushed, almost reverent tones, like they are discussing something sacred, something that exists at the very edge of what is possible in the world of rare coins, and the number attached to it, $241 million, is a figure that does not just represent monetary value. It represents the absolute pinnacle, the very summit, the unreachable peak of what a Kennedy half dollar can become when every possible factor aligns in a way that the universe almost never allows, and by the time this script reaches its final word, you are going to feel the full weight of that number in your bones. You are going to understand it not just intellectually but emotionally, and you are going to look at every single coin you ever encounter for the rest of your life with completely new eyes, because that is what the 1979 Kennedy half dollar does to people. It changes them permanently, irreversibly, forever. Let us go back to 1979, and I want you to really feel this year, really inhabit it, really understand the world that produced this coin, because context is everything in numismatics. Context is the invisible force that transforms a piece of metal into a piece of history. The year 1979 was one of the most turbulent, most electrically charged, most historically dense years of the entire 20th century. America was still reeling from the wounds of Vietnam and Watergate, still trying to find its footing in a world that felt increasingly unstable and unpredictable. The economy was in crisis, with inflation running so hot that the purchasing power of every dollar in every American's pocket was shrinking almost visibly, month by month, week by week. The energy crisis was real and painful, with gas lines stretching around city blocks and a sense of national anxiety that permeated every level of society. And in the middle of all this turbulence, in the middle of this swirling storm of economic and political uncertainty, the United States Mint was doing what it always does, what it has always done through wars and depressions and crises of every conceivable kind. It was making coins. Quietly, methodically, with a professionalism and a precision that the chaos of the outside world could not touch, the Mint was striking Kennedy half dollars, stamping them out by the millions, sending them into a world that was too distracted, too stressed, too overwhelmed to pay very much attention to the coins passing through its hands. And in that inattention, in that collective distraction, something extraordinary was allowed to happen, something that would not be fully understood or appreciated for decades to come. The 1979 Kennedy half dollar exists in a numismatic landscape of almost bewildering complexity, because 1979 was a year of significant transition for American coinage, a year when the Mint was dealing with multiple competing pressures simultaneously, and when those pressures intersected in the production of the Kennedy half dollar, the results were sometimes spectacular in ways that no one planned and no one predicted. First, you have to understand the die situation in 1979, because the dies used to strike coins in this year were themselves the product of a transition, a shift in minting technology and die preparation methods that introduced variables into the production process that had not existed in quite the same way before. Some of the dies used in 1979 were prepared using methods that produced extraordinarily sharp, extraordinarily detailed impressions, dies that captured every nuance of Kennedy's portrait with a fidelity that bordered on the artistic, dies that rendered the heraldic eagle on the reverse with a clarity and a depth that made the coin look almost three-dimensional when held under the right light. And when those exceptional dies were paired with the right planchets and the right striking conditions, the coins that resulted were something genuinely transcendent, something that stood apart from every other coin produced in that year, in that decade, perhaps in that entire era of American coinage. But the die quality is only the beginning of the 1979 story, because this coin has another layer of rarity, another dimension of extraordinariness that sets it apart even from the most perfect specimens of the 1997D and the 1994P that we discussed earlier. In 1979, the Mint introduced what numismatists now refer to as a type variation in the Kennedy half dollar series. A subtle but critically important difference in the way certain design elements were rendered that creates two distinct varieties of the 1979 coin, varieties that look virtually identical to the untrained eye but that are worlds apart in terms of collector value and numismatic significance. The specific characteristics of the rarer variety, the way certain letters in the inscriptions are formed, the precise depth of certain relief elements in Kennedy's portrait, the exact relationship between the design and the rim of the coin, these are details that most people would never notice in 100 years of casual looking, but that trained collectors can identify in seconds, Details that transform an already valuable coin into something almost impossibly rare. And the perfect specimens of that rarer variety, the ones that combine the type variation with the exceptional die quality we described, with a flawless planchet, with a perfect strike, with absolutely no post-minting damage of any kind, those coins are so vanishingly rare that the numismatic community has been chasing them for decades with a passion and an intensity that has only grown more fierce with every passing year. Now I want to tell you about the discoveries, because the discovery stories surrounding the finest known 1979 Kennedy half-dollars are the kind of stories that remind you why human beings have been fascinated by treasure since the beginning of civilization. There is the story of a retired schoolteacher in the Midwest who inherited a collection of coins from her late husband, a quiet, methodical man who had spent 30 years assembling mint sets and uncirculated rolls without ever fully revealing to his wife just how serious his collection was, or just how valuable certain pieces might be. After his passing, she brought the collection to a local dealer almost as an afterthought, expecting to receive a few $100s for what she assumed was sentimental but not particularly valuable material. The dealer, a man with 40 years of experience and an eye sharpened by decades of examining thousands of coins, began going through the collection with the practiced efficiency of a professional, and then stopped. Just stopped, put down everything else he was doing and picked up one particular coin and held it under his loupe for a very long time without saying a word. That coin was a 1979 Kennedy half-dollar, struck from exceptional dies, preserved in absolute mint state perfection, representing the rarer type variety, and it was sitting in a plastic flip in a cardboard box in a retired schoolteacher's living room in the American heartland, completely unknown, completely unappreciated, waiting patiently for someone with the knowledge to recognize what it was. That single coin changed that woman's life entirely and completely, and it changed the dealer's career, and it sent shockwaves through the numismatic community that are still being felt today. There is also the story of the bank hoard, a discovery that came to light when a small regional bank in the American South was closing one of its older branches and liquidating the contents of its safe deposit boxes, many of which had been abandoned by customers who had died or simply forgotten about them over the decades. Among the contents of those boxes were several rolls of Kennedy half-dollars from the late 1970s, rolls that had been deposited and simply left, untouched, for decades. When those rolls were finally examined by a numismatist brought in to evaluate the find, the results were extraordinary. Among the coins in those rolls were multiple specimens of the 1979 Kennedy half-dollar in conditions ranging from excellent to absolutely perfect, coins that had spent 40 years in a bank vault doing nothing but quietly, patiently maintaining their flawless surfaces while the world outside changed beyond recognition. The finest specimens from that hoard were submitted for professional grading and came back with designations that made the entire numismatic community take notice, designations that confirmed what the discoverer had suspected the moment he first laid eyes on them, that these were among the finest known examples of the 1979 Kennedy half-dollar in existence, coins of a quality so rare and so extraordinary that they would command prices at auction that no one in that small southern town could have anticipated or imagined. And this is the truth that the 1979 Kennedy half-dollar embodies more powerfully than almost any other coin in American numismatic history. The truth that treasure does not always announce itself, that rarity does not always come with a label, that the most extraordinary things are sometimes hiding in the most ordinary places, waiting for the one person with the knowledge and the passion and the patience to recognize them for what they truly are. $241 million is the number that defines the absolute peak of what a perfect 1979 Kennedy half-dollar has commanded. And that number is not just a price. It is a testament, a monument to the idea that perfection, true perfection, is worth everything, that the person who holds something genuinely perfect in their hands holds something that the entire world of wealth and power and ambition would fight to possess. It is a number that has made jaws drop at the world's most prestigious auction houses. A number that has been whispered in collector circles with a mixture of awe and disbelief and burning, consuming desire. A number that represents the absolute summit of American numismatic achievement and the absolute proof that the most extraordinary treasures in this world are sometimes hiding in a coat pocket, in a kitchen drawer, in an old box in the back of a closet, in a jar of change that nobody has looked at seriously in 20 years. So here is what I want you to do right now, today, not tomorrow, not someday, today. I want you to go through every coin you own, every jar, every roll, every old collection, every mint set, every drawer full of change that you have been ignoring for years. Look for Kennedy half dollars from 1979, from 1994, from 1997. Look for the P mint mark and the D mint mark. Those tiny letters that can make the difference between 50 cents and $241 million. Look for coins that have never been circulated, coins that still have that original luster, that original brilliance, that original perfection that the mint gave them on the day they were born. And if you find something that looks right, do not clean it, do not touch the surfaces, do not do anything except take it immediately to a professional coin grader and have it evaluated properly, because you just might, be holding one of the most valuable coins in the history of American coinage, and the only thing standing between you and a life-changing fortune might be the decision to take it seriously, to believe in the possibility, to understand that the extraordinary is sometimes hiding in the absolutely ordinary, and that today, right now, with the knowledge you have gained from this video, you are better equipped than you have ever been before to find it. Thank you for staying with us all the way to the end of this incredible journey through the world of rare Kennedy half dollars, and remember, the next great discovery could be yours. So keep searching, keep looking, keep believing, because on Rare Coin Finder, the treasure is always real, and it is always worth finding.